Combine is underway in Indy, and look at all these people who you're going to hear from on our show. Plus, you won't believe what GM says they're all in. Hint, it's not Jerry Jones. You can see all of those faces. We're going to bring you that and so much more coming your way right here on NFL Live. Glad you're with us and welcome to the show. Mel Kiper Jr., Lewis Riddick here. Matt Miller will join from a bit in Indy. We're all headed to Indy this week, but new on NFL Live, I want to dive right in, guys. Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni had some interesting thoughts on the future of wide receiver A.J. Brown with the Eagles. Our Kimberly Martin asked about him this afternoon.
Nick, you've said that you want A.J. Brown on the team, great teammate, great player, but nothing's guaranteed. Can you envision this offense without him, though?
He has meant so much to our football team these past 4 years. And like I said, I've always said I've never hated my relationship with him and the relationship that I have with him. And it's been awesome going to work with him, going to battle with him over these past 4 years. And, we're at a point that, we want to keep good players around. Like, it's not at a point. That's what they always want to keep good players around. And so always excited to have him on the football team and look forward to continuing that relationship. I know I want to continue that relationship. I know he wants to continue that relationship, and excited about that.
Okay, so Lewis, do you think A.J. Brown will still be an Eagle, though, when week 1 arrives?
Yeah, I really think this is a toss-up. This is really up in the air. There's just too much, well, this is what we want. This is what ideally we'd like to have. We're not in the business of getting rid of, quality players, premium top-line players. Well, of course not. We all know that. We all know that you'd like to have good players. But what we all know also is that there is something in terms of fit, chemistry, culture, whatever word you want to put on this, that just is not working here. That it's constantly every week, once you get into the, really the depth of the season with Philadelphia, that this relationship between this player and this organization, this player and the quarterback, this player and the head coach, whatever it is, just seems to always be in a state of turmoil, always is in a state of discussion, so to speak. And we obviously have to discuss it. Usually when it gets to that point, the culture and the fit supersede the talent on the football field and what this man can do from you between the white lines. And even that starts to take a hit because the culture and the fit just isn't what it needs to be. And we saw that play out this year. So to answer your question, I wouldn't bet on him being there this year. I would bet that A.J. Brown is somewhere else.
Mel, you have the Eagles in your latest mock going with the tight end. If A.J. is on the move, could you see Philly, though, maybe switching up, going wide out with pick 23?
Laura and Lou, this is interesting because if you go back to A.J. Brown when he left Tennessee, what did they say when he went to Philadelphia? Oh, we're going to bring in Treylon Burks, and Treylon Burks is going to pick up right where A.J. Brown left off. It didn't happen. But what's the difference? Howie Roseman and the Eagles and that personnel department, they draft exceptionally well. So A.J. Brown has moved. I know Buffalo, I'm sure Josh Allen says, hey, come on up here with me, right? If that happens where he's moved, the Eagles have a lot of confidence that they can make up for that loss, whether it's a Denzel Boston out of University of Washington in the first round. This is a ton of receivers. You can draft a Chris Bell out of Louisville, maybe in the second, third round. He's a first rounder, but because of the knee injury, he gets pushed down. They can invest in a guy like that. The Campbell out of Alabama last year who was injured. Look what kind of rookie year he had. There's a Jordan Tyson drop down, and they move up maybe to get him, the wide receiver out of Arizona State, who has a durability concern. What happens there? It's like the Eagles, the personnel department is so strong there. The culture in terms of they know what they can do, that they do move them. I think they are confident they can fill that void. In this draft, it works out really well because the deepest and strongest position in this draft by miles is wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, certainly so many options. You named a few of them there, Mel. And like you said, Howie Roseman, no stranger to figuring these things out and somehow finding somebody that everyone said maybe they expected it, maybe they didn't. Either way, it works out. They end up at the top of the NFL. All right, new on NFL Live, Kimberly Martin spoke with new Falcons head coach Kevin Stefanski on his quarterback situation earlier today. Listen to this.
So, Kevin, earlier today, your GM, Ian Cunningham, mentioned that you guys were going to release Kirk Cousins on the first day of the league year. Is Michael Penix going to be ready by week 1? And if he's not, what is the plan at quarterback?
Yeah, all things we need to work through. And as Michael knows, the most important thing for him right now is to rehab. And he's doing a great job. He's in there every single day, doing everything in his power to get ready. Timelines and those type of things. We're in February. We'll deal with those when appropriate.
All right, answered like a true head coach who's not really going to give us much. But Lewis, Penix has a lot of health questions ongoing still. You think he's the guy for Atlanta moving forward?
No, personally, I don't. I understand. Look, you nailed it. Look, obviously, Kevin's trying to kind of buy himself some time. He's saying, hey, look, we'll work through that. He's just trying to get healthy. We're just going through our process, whatever other buzzword that you want to use. The fact of the matter is, though, they don't have anybody healthy and or on their roster under contract that they could line up right now and play a regular season game with and win a game. Now, I understand that we're still in February and we're just about to start the new league year. But we're talking about the most important position on the roster. And we're talking about the guy who's coming back, having a long, extensive injury history. And we're talking about a whole new regime here. And we're talking about a guy who's running the personnel department in Matt Ryan, who is a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. He's not going to go into the season with these kind of questions. I think they are going to be in the market for a veteran signal caller. I think they're obviously going to look at the draft and see if they can find some kind of value there. But you're going to tell me like a guy like Malik Willis wouldn't make sense in Kevin Stefanski's offense, considering the offense that he's just coming from in Green Bay and the carryover it would have in Atlanta? Matt Ryan's going to make a big move here because he knows how important the position is.
Yeah, it's a good point. And we're going to put Malik Willis on a lot of teams until he's on an actual team because he's a good fit in a lot of different places. More new sound today as the entire league is speaking at the Combine. Ravens GM Eric DeCosta talked about the contracts for center Tyler Linderbaum and Lamar Jackson.
I have spoken to Lamar about a lot of different things over the last month. He's been very engaged. As I said, he was a big value to us in the coaching search. But we'll continue those conversations moving forward. Tyler's a guy I have tremendous respect for. Obviously he's proven to be, in my opinion, the best center in the league. We've been having conversations. We've had conversations since the end of the season. And at this point in time, we've made him a market-setting proposal, offer. And hopefully we can get something done with him between now and the start of the new league year.
Okay, as you might expect, they know what this guy deserves in Lamar Jackson. He said market-setting deal. DeCosta sounds pretty confident, Lewis, in getting that new deal done with Lamar. How do you see this new contract playing out, though, for Lamar in Baltimore?
Yeah, this is all about relationships again, right? Especially considering that Lamar is the one who negotiates his contracts. And we know that it hasn't always gone smoothly in terms of the lines of communication between the Ravens and Lamar. This is going to be about Eric DeCosta and Lamar getting on the phone, having regular discourse and dialogue, trying to arrive at a contract that obviously represents what Lamar's fair value is, and we know it's awful high. It's right at the very top, while at the same time giving them some cap space to where they can go out and continue to try and build out this roster around. And that, quite honestly, especially on the defensive side, needs an overhaul. So that's going to be important. And it's important for them to get this done so Lamar has a clear mind to go ahead and establish that relationship with his new offensive coordinator in Declan Doyle, which is probably the most important relationship that needs to be really nurtured and grown amongst all the teams in the NFL this year. Because the reason why things changed in Baltimore is primarily to try and get them to take the next step. And that next step involves Lamar and his ability to lead this football team.
Yeah, the centerpiece, of course. And as it currently stands, Lamar is set to count at $74.5 million against the salary cap this season. That's the second highest in the NFL. That's why what Lou's talking about there, they want to restructure some things. All right, Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft was released today. Mel has the Raiders taking Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza, no surprise, at #1 overall. Raiders GM John Spytek talked to our Kimberly Martin earlier today.
You know, there is a quarterback here, Heisman Trophy winner, national champion, that is projected to land in Las Vegas. But what have you liked about Fernando Mendoza's game thus far, and what are you hoping to see this week?
Well, we're just excited to get a chance to sit with them for the first time. You know, all these guys really at the Combine, we haven't had a chance to spend really any personal time with them, and so it's one of my favorite parts of the Combine to sit with these guys for 18 minutes, the speed dating round. And we're just anybody that comes in, we're looking for them to be themselves and show us who they are and have an authenticity to them and see if it makes sense for them to be a Raider.
John, you said a few moments ago that you expect Max Crosby to be a Raider. Does that mean you are completely ruling out any trade possibilities involving him?
I don't rule out anything in this league. You know, I mean, the changes all the time, but my expectation is Max is a Raider. He's too good of a player, and we value him too much.
Okay, but the key was he wasn't ruling it out. So here's the key also. When it comes to Fernando Mendoza, I think we all agree should be the #1 overall pick, and that makes a lot of sense. But how do they surround him with the talent that he needs to have success? So, Lewis, that question, do you think it's time for Vegas to move on from Max Crosby with the intent of getting some of that support for Mendoza?
I think, John answered that question, right? He said, we're not ruling it out. So what he's saying is, if you want him, come get him, but you're going to pay. You're going to pay up because he knows that his team is devoid of talent. He knows that he needs, well, look, if Max Crosby isn't on the roster, he could take any one of the 11 positions and upgrade it on the defensive side. And the only way you can do that, it's not like teams just give you players. You got to go select them. And the only way you can select them is if you get draft picks. And I'm sure Clint Kubiak is sitting there going, hey, look, I'm the new guy on the block. John, you're in your second year as the GM. This is a hard reset for our team. Of course, we don't want to give away good players like Max Crosby. He's the quintessential Las Vegas Raider. I was going to say Oakland Raider because that's what I was, but he's the quintessential Raider. You don't want to let those guys go, but this is a business, man. There's a salary cap. You only have a fixed amount of assets to work with, and the only way you can change that and acquire more is you got to give up something to get something. And they may have to give up Max Crosby in order for them to, down the road, be a contending team. I wouldn't rule it out. As a matter of fact, I would bet on that happening more than him staying there because of what they need, Laura.
Yeah, and you think about other teams that may have a hole to fill. Max Crosby comes in and busts through any hole that needs to be filled. He's so good. Mel, is Mendoza a lock at #1? I'm not talking about the talent. We know that's great, but could some other team swoop in maybe and try to get him?
No, they may try, but they will be unsuccessful. This is a special player, in my opinion. I think the Raiders are fortunate. They have the #1 pick, obviously, because they have a guy sitting there. If they were picking 2 like the Jets would love to have Mendoza, but they're picking second, not first, because this kid is a guy that just win baby quarterback. That's all he did this year. At Cal, he was sacked 41 times. He went and improved in that aspect, only 18 times during the regular season. At Indiana, the leadership, the toughness, they like a Raider. Talk about Raider Nation. They should love this pick because they know that once you surround him up front on the O-line, Brock Bowers is special. Ashton Genty, get him some running room to complement the quarterback in Fernando Mendoza. Build up that roster. You have the right quarterback in a division with Bo Nix and Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert in the AFC. You got to close that gap, and Mendoza will be the right man to do it once the personnel around him improves.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes you say, all right, so then who's going to get Max Crosby? Because they need to do this, and they need to make sure they get as much as they can from Max Crosby with the intent of supporting Fernando Mendoza and company. Love it, you guys. We're just getting started here on NFL Live. The Steelers court, as far as I'm concerned. But we got a lot to do before then, right? Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft was released today. We told you about Mel having the Raiders taking Fernando Mendoza at 1. But after 1, the picks get really interesting. Mel, round out the top 4 picks. Start us with the Jets at 2.
Yeah, spring training baseball is underway. I was watching the Blue Jays, Yankees earlier today, and I'm going to throw a little curveball, Laura. And when I got, Caleb Downs going at 2 to the Jets for that reason. It's a kid who obviously is worthy based on performance at Ohio State and Alabama, where he stepped in right away as a true freshman for Nick Saban and did a great job in that Crimson Tide Deep Patrol. Did it for 2 years at Ohio State for the Buckeyes. And this is a kid who intercepts passes at 2 each year, and he's a guy who has versatility. And you talk about second pick overall, is it too high? I say, no, it's not. Eric Turner went second overall. Eric Berry went 5th. Sean Taylor went 5th. And a host of others went early that hit big. Kyle Hamilton, what a great player he is, dropped to 14. We talk about Nick Emanwari, early second round. What an impact he had with the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. So, no, it's not too high. They did not intercept the pass last year. The Jets did not. He's going to bring, talk about culture change. He's going to set the bar high. He's not going to tolerate anything but a winning attitude, a winning approach on that football team. I understand you could go edge rusher with David Bailey or an all-around guy like Orville Reese, but safeties with the instincts and the versatility of Caleb Downs and getting it done for 3 different coordinators in college speaks volumes. His father I scouted, his brother, he's been around football his whole life. This kid's one will of a player, and he is as instinctive as any safety you will ever come across.
Yeah, so I love that. As you round out that top 4, Caleb Downs to the Jets, David Bailey to Arizona, Orville Reese to Tennessee. Let's talk a little bit more about the Jets and Caleb Downs at number 2. Lewis, that's something we haven't seen in over 30 years, the Jets going safety. You like that pick?
Yeah, you know what? By you saying that you haven't seen it in over 30 years, you know what you're doing? You're dating me. You're making me feel old because the last time a guy was drafted that high, I was his teammate, Laura. We came out in the same draft.
Oh, let's
It was
go.
Eric Turner who went to the Browns. And look, and you know what? And I loved him. He was my best friend in football, and I miss him dearly. He passed away years ago. But I'll tell you what, I understand why Mel is talking about Caleb the way he is. And he's talking about a culture changer. And what do you need more at the Jets than a guy who's just going to come in and say, hey, look, I don't know what y'all have done before, but I ain't used to losing, and we're not having that crap around here. We're changing the way things are going to get done. And that's not Aaron Glenn's job to do. That's something that needs to be policed in the locker room. And you know what? This pick reminds me of exactly what DeMeco Ryans needed to do when he went to Houston, and he drafted Will Anderson Jr. That's the kind of guy that you need, a guy who is going to be a foundational pillar in the organization. I just would like it to be someone who plays either on the second or first level, a guy who's a pass rusher, a guy who's going to change games with impact plays. That's why I say Arvell Reese there, who comes from the same program as Ohio State, but I understand why Mel is mocking Caleb Downs there and the reasons why he's doing it.
And one thing, Laura and Lou, about Arvell Reese, the versatility, off ball and edge. Can he be Micah Parsons? Can he do what Micah did? Go from off ball to being an edge rusher who can get after the quarterback and be one of the best in the business. Can he be that guy? We hope he can. In terms of David Bailey, he did it this year at Texas Tech. After being a good player at Stanford, he became great with the Red Raiders. So for Arizona, for Tennessee, I think of Robert Saleh taking over. Arvell Reese would look great in a Titan uniform. Certainly David Bailey in an Arizona Cardinal uniform will look great. But I think if you look at Caleb Downs and he gets past 2, how about the New York Giants and John Harbaugh looking at 5 if he gets to that point? He had Kyle Hamilton. Now he can bring in Caleb Downs. So even if he gets past 2, Caleb Downs is not going to have to wait long to hear his name called.
A reason why the Jets might want to draft him, by the way, the Jets became the first team to not record an interception since INTs were first recorded in 1933. That's a side of history that you don't want to be on. All right, new on NFL Live. Let's stay with the Jets. Rich Cimini tweeting this, suggestions that the Jets will tag Breece Hall if they can't get a deal done by next week, making it clear that they want to keep Hall, but that's a timeline to keep an eye on for sure. Let's stay in the division and head to Buffalo, where Joe Brady and Brandon Beane spoke about plans for their offense, including Keon Coleman's future.
The challenge to Keon, can you go back and do what you did all offseason and your training camp? And, you know, if you remember, you had a great game 1 against Baltimore. Don't let some of the maturity issues off the field affect the product on the field.
A lot of people think the only way to help Josh Allen is to get him offensive help, right? Sometimes helping Josh Allen is inside the building, like just things inside the building. Sometimes it's helping him with a defensive player, with getting him the ball back another possession, like that. All of those things help Josh Allen. So there's a lot of different ways, and that's the perk of Brandon Beane is he goes through all those little things. And I'm never gonna. Josh Allen is at the root of everything we think of. We think about Josh Allen, and whatever we can do to help him have success, we're going to do.
Hey, that makes a lot of sense, right? Hello, there's the big board. Love it. In Mel's latest mock, he has Buffalo adding some wide receiver help for Josh Allen with Washington wideout Denzel Boston. Listen, no matter what happens with Keon Coleman, Mel, they could use some help there. Is that the thought behind this pick?
Yes, it is, Laura. And there's a couple teams there. You talk about Cleveland Browns. If they don't take a Carnell Tate and they need a receiver like Denzel Boston, he would be in the mix there. We talked about the Eagles, with Boston being a possibility there. Another guy, the big body receiver, who's so consistent and so professional in his approach. And he varies in terms of his routes, his speed in his routes. He's a guy who can run the route tree. He was an outstanding football player for the Washington Huskies. People, I think, didn't see enough of him. They don't understand the quality of this player and what he can mean to an NFL team that brings him into the fold. So Denzel Boston all year is one of the top 5 receivers in the country. Certainly if he's there in the latter portion of round 1 for a ton of teams, about 3, 4, 5 teams that could be looking at Denzel Boston at that point. Chris Brazel, the second wide receiver out of Tennessee, would certainly be in that mix if he has a strong combine, which I anticipate. But Denzel Boston is a proven entity. Say if he goes to Buffalo and Josh Allen, he's not going to drop the ball. He's going to be dependable, reliable, and he's going to show up every week, do a job, and that's what they need in Buffalo right now.
That is music to Bills fans' ears and probably to Josh Allen's ears, although he's the ultimate professional about all that. I'm glad you brought up Brazel, too. Just continue to talk about the depth of that receiver class this year. New on NFL Live, Dolphins GM John Eric Sullivan spoke earlier about the Dolphins' plans for Tua Tagovailoa and the team's QB position.
As it pertains to Tua, I know that question is coming, so I'll just get ahead of the curve. We've had conversations with Tua and his representation. Everything's on the table. including the potential of a trade. We don't know which way that's going to go. There's a lot of different factors at play, a lot of conversations being had. Tua, I thought, even though things didn't go well at the end of the year, did some good things along the way. And it's my job to infuse competition into that room along with every other room as we go down the road. As it pertains to the Miami Dolphins, listen, I think I'd be lying to you. Any team that is potentially in a needy quarterback situation, if they tell you they're not talking about Malik Willis, that would be a lie. But we've talked about a lot of people, a lot of free agents. Malik's just one of them.
And that was really interesting. A lot there, certainly, Lewis. And we know that's the question for Miami. What are they going to do with Tua? You heard a lot of it's on the table, but let's put you in that GM spot. If you're the Dolphins, what is your plan for the quarterback spot this offseason?
Yeah, I think obviously you'd love to have Malik, especially, considering Jeff Hafley's, familiarity with him. And those are the kind of things that you look for when you're talking about veteran player acquisition. But look, Tua has a $99 million, dead cap hit. He has $54 million coming this year, fully guaranteed. They may have to ride with him for another year, where the next year, I believe his dead cap number kind of decreases to about $32 million. And it makes it a lot easier to move on from him, because right now, I just don't know if the trade market's going to be real hot for Tua, considering how the season ended and what people feel as though, Mike McDaniel did to, really accentuate his strengths and minimize his weaknesses that maybe they're not willing to do. And they may feel as though, look, this is not someone who we need to go ahead and go out and pursue. So Miami may be stuck with him for another year. I think everything is on the table right now, and I think John Eric Sullivan and Jeff Hafley know that.
Hey, you heard what Sullivan said there, too, about infusing competition into that room. That almost gave me a little hint that he might expect Tua to be sticking around. All right, still to come. Steelers GM Omar Khan. We're back on NFL Live. Glad you're with us. And here's a look at Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft. It dropped today. Go check the whole thing out. But check out this. His second of two quarterbacks going off the board in round one. Mel has Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson going to the Steelers at 21st overall. I love it. We'll dive into it in moments. But first, Steelers GM Omar Khan spoke earlier today about what he's looking for in the Steelers' next QB.
Like all the fans, we're all searching for the next franchise, player. This guy's going to be our quarterback for 10 to 15 years, and, it might be Will. We don't know. We're excited to work with Will. We have to find the right quarterback that's going to be an AFC North quarterback. Playing in the AFC North, there's nothing like it. The cold weather, the rivalries, the division, the physicality of the division. So it's got to be a AFC North quarterback. The door's open to have Aaron back. I've had conversations with him. I spoke to him last week. Mike McCarthy spoke to him, and right now we're proceeding. He's a free agent and he's not on the roster. So, but he knows how we feel about him.
Okay. Hey, by the way, little travel issue will not stop our man Matt Miller from joining us. He's there in Indy. We'll see you there soon, Matt, and thanks for being with us. Welcome in. A lot to unpack there from Con. Mel, I want to start with you. Do you think Ty Simpson is an AFC North type quarterback, as Con puts it? Because that's a very specific description of a QB.
Sounds like he wants to bring back Big Ben Roethlisberger is what I sense there, but they're not going to happen. I think it's about Ty Simpson. He's not, 6'5". He's not 250 pounds. He's 6'2". He's about 210 to 215. Is that enough? And you think you look back into history, not going to go back into the 60s and 70s for Lewis, but I'll talk about quarterbacks that have had success in cold weather areas. And I'll go right to Tom Brady up in New England. Didn't have the big time arm. 10 Super Bowls, 7 wins, right? You go to the Cleveland Browns with Brian Sipe and Bernie Kosar. Did a great job there. Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. So you don't have to have that. You'd like to. Ty Simpson everybody looked great in the dome, right? If you want, it's where you want to play. Josh would love to play in the dome. But the bottom line is for Ty Simpson, his arm strength, good enough. I like Mac Jones as a comp. Matt Miller's the comp king. You look at Mac Jones, I think he's more athletic. I think he's faster. He's more of a dual threat. He's had 15 starts. Mac Jones only had 17 starts. Mac Jones had a good start to his career, fell back. Now he's reestablished himself. So, Matt, to me, he's worthy of being the 21st pick. I think he's in play for the Jets. I know Lewis thinks he'll go before 21, but if he's there at 21, I got to believe the Steelers think long and hard about Ty Simpson.
I think they'll think long and hard about him, Mel, but I do not think he's an AFC North type quarterback. I think if that is what they're looking for, that is Will Howard. That is someone like Malik Willis, who is a free agent from the Green Bay Packers and will be commanding big money on the market this year. But looking at Ty Simpson, you mentioned it, 6'2", and we'll see this week if that's true or not, if he's legitimately 6'2", or if he's going to be a little bit smaller than that. 208 pounds is what Alabama listed him at. The things that you love about Ty Simpson are poise, processing speed, and accuracy. But that fell off over the last 6 games of the year after his arm got banged up, after the offensive line in front of him started to struggle. So when I look at Pittsburgh, to me this feels like a team that's maybe pressing again at quarterback like they did when they drafted Kenny Pickett in the 20s. I don't know if any of us had Pickett ranked that highly, but they still took him there. And now, just a couple years later, they're still looking for that elusive franchise quarterback. So as much as I like Ty Simpson, I would like to see what they have in Will Howard, because I think he better fits the division.
Yeah, look, I'm not someone who's going to get – look, I have a lot of respect for Omar Khan. He's been in the Steelers organization for a long time. He's lived in Pittsburgh for a long time. He's seen a lot of games. Okay, his head coach right now, Mike McCarthy, he coached a guy in Green Bay named Aaron Rodgers who came from Cal. Okay, and he played in Green Bay and ripped it up. So, I mean, when they were sitting up there in Green Bay, were they sitting there thinking, is Aaron Rodgers a Green Bay, Wisconsin quarterback? I mean, what does that even mean necessarily? Look, I think this. Look, I like Will Howard. I don't like Will Howard as much as Ty Simpson. I don't even think they're in the same stratosphere as far as their ability to throw the football. I think that Ty Simpson is a guy who right now, based upon how the season ended, and we've talked about it a lot, and we're going to talk about it a lot more, based upon how the latter half of his season went, which wasn't all on him. The guy was banged up. The offensive line is very inconsistent. The running game is non-existent, and the wide receiver core is up or down from week to week. And then he turns it around in the playoffs against Oklahoma and brings his team back from a 17-point deficit. He's tailor-made for Mike McCarthy's system, and Mike has coached some good quarterbacks. It'll be interesting to see what their evaluation of him is. I don't think he's a reach at 21. And yeah, Mel, I do think he's going to go before that.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, Ty Simpson's going to be a big topic of conversation there in Indy for sure, and we'll see what ends up happening if the Steelers end up doing it. All right, we've got more coming your way here when it comes to many people speaking around the league. New on NFL Live, Duke Tobin met with the media just moments ago.
I've been doing this a long time. I've never not been all in. We are all in. We are trying to get the best team possible with the resources we have. Last year we went all in. We signed over $400 million worth of contracts going all in. That's what we do. We want to be all in. We're trying to put the best roster together every year, and this year is no different.
Okay, the Bengals GM, so maybe if that's true, good news for Joe Burrow. Lewis, what do you make of what you heard from Tobin?
I don't know, Laura. I really am at a loss for words sometimes when we're talking about the Bengals, as far as, and when teams use the vernacular like we're all in. Yeah, I get it. They've spent a lot of money. There's no question about that. They have committed resources to this offensive line. They just have not been able to get the kind of mileage and the kind of production out of it that they want. They committed resources to the wide receiver position, and Joe Burrow, I think obviously that's a slam dunk. On the defensive side, there's some kind of disconnect, though, from the evaluation and selection phase to the development and implementation phase. Somehow they're not getting the right guys for the coaches that they have, and the coaches aren't pulling out, the best out of these guys in the way in which they may be projected when they were sitting there picking them and drafting them on draft day. They got to get better at it. It's as simple as that. There is no magic player out there right now that I think is just going to turn around the Bengals' fortunes, in particular on the defensive side, although I do love the mocking of Reuben Bain Jr. to the Cincinnati Bengals at 10. I really like that pick because Reuben has been coached by the very best in Jason Taylor. Reuben proved his worth at the college level. I think he's a can't-miss prospect. But who knows once you get to Cincinnati? Who knows what's going to happen, especially with their defensive players? They haven't had a lot of luck.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, you should be all in every year, but it's been much harder for them to draft when they're winning. It's easy to draft when you have the number 1 overall pick and Joe Burrow is there. It's easy to draft when you have the number 5 overall pick and Jamar Chase is sitting there. It got much more complicated once they started winning. So now we see them back in the top 10, and I'm with you, Lewis. I think this pick has to be on defense, whether it's Reuben Bain Jr. from Miami, maybe David Bailey from Texas Tech finds his way down the board to them at 9. Maybe it's even in the secondary where we have Caleb Downs, the safety who Mel has going number 2 overall today to the New York Jets. Jermod McCoy, the corner from Tennessee, and Mansour Delane, the corner from LSU, are going to be in the mix as well as top 10 picks. So this is one of those years where, again, it feels like Cincinnati has to go defense or bust. But like you said, they have drafted these positions, Miles Murphy, Shamar Stewart, and they're not getting the production from these guys. So I do think they have to kind of have that come to Jesus moment between the front office and the coaching staff of, we're giving you the resources, but we're not getting the development, we're not getting the production. So where is that disconnect that you mentioned? That's something they have to figure out no matter where they're picking in the first round, and really no matter who they pick with this selection.
Yeah, it's a good point. And when you think of some of the names that you guys are listing there, Ruben Bain, I mean, if that guy doesn't get the coaching that he needs and the situation that he needs, it's going to be a darn shame because there's so much talent, especially on the defensive side, and a player like that deserves the best. We'll see if the Bengals take that opportunity.
I know a lot of you are going to, on top of your mind is our quarterback situation. So, here's what I would say is I've said before, I'd say all options are on the table for us, okay? We got Kyler, Jacoby, Keaton, all under contract. As it pertains to that position,
I'm open and embracing playing the best quarterback possible for the Arizona Cardinals, and so we're still working through that process right now, and there's going to be a lot of factors that's going to lead into that.
Matt, what do you think the Cardinals should do at this position?
I think when you have a former #1 overall pick at quarterback and your front office is not openly supporting him at the combine, that tells us a lot about what they will do. I don't think Kyler is the guy long term. We saw Jacoby Brissett play well. There's already been buzz that they could be a team that gets active on the trade market. If someone like Tyson Bagent from the Chicago Bears becomes available, he could be someone that has moved this offseason. So I think Arizona is a team very, very much in the quarterback market, despite the massive cap hit that will happen if Kyler Murray is traded or released.
It feels like that's just going to continue to develop over the rest of this week. All right, new on NFL Live. Chiefs GM Brett Veach spoke at the Combine earlier about protecting Patrick Mahomes and the future of tight end Travis Kelce. Listen to this.
Yeah, I think we've kind of taken a different approach with Travis in the sense that I think, we've kind of prepared for either scenario. And Coach had mentioned on Friday, he's had great dialogue with Travis on our end, myself, Crochet, Travis's crew. We've had some good dialogue there.
And how can you protect Patrick coming off a torn ACL?
Well, I think certainly we want to get more explosive in the running game. And, we've invested in that interior and with Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey, two of the best in the league. And the running game takes a lot of pressure off everybody. So I think if we can be more explosive and more effective in the running game, I think obviously we take a lot of pressure off Pat, especially coming back early in the season with the injury.
Hey, I know how they can help with that in the draft. Unfamiliar territory for KC this offseason, by the way, picking in the top 10. Mel, who do you have the Chiefs going with at number 9?
All right, remember back in the day, the Dallas Cowboys backed up on their own 1-yard line Monday night against the Vikings, and Tony Dorsett races 99 yards for a touchdown. And, Jeremiah Love can do exactly that. He is a home run hitting running back. Imagine Patrick Mahomes coming back from the injury to have a guy like this alongside him in that backfield. Not only a great runner, but a guy who can catch the football out of the backfield. You can put him out in the slot, put him out wide. He doesn't fumble the football. Like I said, the touchdown maker he is. In a blink, he can go, like we were talking with Lou earlier, 75 yards, and all of a sudden, you got a touchdown. So for me, Jeremiah Love, it seems too good to be true that he's there at 9, because the New Orleans Saints sit there at 8. We were talking earlier about, will the Chiefs try to move ahead of the Saints to guarantee the acquisition of one Jeremiah Love? It would be so much of a weapon for not just a runner, but a receiver for that offense. So it'll be interesting to see. They know who they have to get ahead of, the Chiefs do. Will they just sit there at 9 and let the Saints take them? Will they be aggressive, Matt, and move up and get them?
Yeah, Jeremiah Love's my #1 overall player in the class, so it's hard for me to argue with Kuiper about this. Even if he has taught me my entire life that you're not supposed to take a running back in the first round, I guess we're making an exception for it this year. I will be curious to see if Love's there. And I will say this, if he's there and the Chiefs take him, that's fantastic. But you better fix this pass rush in free agency or through the trade market, because they have issues on explosive defense as well. It's not just the run game that's not getting it done. The edges are not providing pressure. George Karlaftis is not getting pressures like he's paid to do. The secondary, Trent McDuffie's contract is about to be an issue. The safety position needs rework. This is not a pick a running back and fix the Chiefs. Yes, they have Patrick Mahomes. Yes, they have a good offensive line, but the defense has holes that have to be addressed. And right now, they only have 6 picks in this draft. So if you give up capital to move up to get Jeremiah Love, where are these answers coming from for this front office that has gone all in, and now they have multiple holes on defense that have to be fixed?
Yeah, when you have a $500 million quarterback, you got to make that priority #1, especially a $500 million quarterback who's coming off of an ACL injury. who was basically your leading rusher, your best ball carrier a year ago. And I agree. Look, they need an inside-outside combination pass rusher, a guy who they can pair with Chris in sub, meaning on passing downs, and a guy who can play base 4-3 defensive end as well. Because you're right, George has not been the guy. Aston Gelati, I just think his upside is capped. You know, the defensive lineman from Louisville who they drafted a year ago. So, yeah, they need to address it. But Jeremiah Love is so ridiculously obvious for this football team. It's the first thing, look, they said, how can you protect Patrick Mahomes? And the first thing Brett said was, well, we can run the football better. Yeah. We can be more effective in the run game. Well, you're not going to do that with the guys you have on your roster. And Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith aren't going to run the football. Delivering. If he's there at 9, like I said, it'll be the fastest that you see a card get turned in the history of the draft.
Yeah, and I think that's the tough thing. There's not a whole bunch of great running backs after Jeremiah Love. He's the cream of the crop in this class. They got to get him if that's the direction they're going to go. Still ahead, the Giants.